here on Zoom and also tuning in via Facebook. Happy to be here with all of you. I'm now at the Soquel Seva Ashram in California, near Santa Cruz. And one topic came up when I was here a few days ago, when one devotee, I'll let them remain anonymous in case they would prefer that, but they brought this to me, this issue that, there's always it's an ongoing issue with management in temples. I'm just going to close this door here. Okay, sorry. There's always this ongoing issue in temples of, devotees want to serve, right? But what happens often is there's excess service and insufficient servitors. And so the few servitors who are available, they get overburdened. And then they start to feel like they're being, dumped on, for lack of another word. They start to lose their spiritual enthusiasm and spiritual vision of the privilege, right, of what service actually is. And they start to feel that, they're just being kind of used, and others aren't helping when they should, and so on and so forth. And so then sometimes they'll just leave altogether and they won't do any service at all, right? We see this conundrum. So it's like an eternal question, how can things be arranged in a temple so that, servitors are always supported and they never feel like that? And so this was the question that came to me. And there are really two sides to this. There's the objective side, concerning more the management aspect of things, organization. And then there is the subjective side, which is more considering the, spiritual vision, higher principles, by which I mean that ultimately we will try to see that everything that is coming to us, it is not an accident, it is not random, but we will try to see that everything is coming from the Lord himself. We will try to have that kind of faith. That is the highest kind of faith. And it's a tricky thing, because obviously not everyone is ready for that kind of faith. And in which case, sometimes servitors may need to take the responsibility to recognize when they're reaching their breaking point, and then, just set their boundaries and say, this is as much as I can do, right? Don't let themselves reach that breaking point, because we never want to be in that spirit of blaming the environment, right? We never want to be in that spirit. But the highest vision is that we will see everything is coming from Krishna. I remember one time when I was in Brazil, and there was one incident, and I won't mention the names of the specific persons involved, but there was one devotee who was asked to do the puja, and there was one devotee who was meant to be doing the puja, but they kind of made some kind of tricky scenario, little bit of a manipulative movement in trying to get somebody else to do their service. They didn't do it in a very nice way, and they used Trivikram Maharaj like as the go-between. So this servitor made some excuse to Trivikram Maharaj, and instead of just directly asking the devotee, can you help me out with my service, this devotee went to Trivikram Maharaj and made some story and asked that another devotee do the service, and so then Trivikram Maharaj called the second devotee and asked, and that second devotee kind of exploded because they knew the backstory. And they got very upset. They got very angry. And Chivika Maharaj, he told me about it. He was very disappointed because he said, actually, it's not about, this person or that person or this situation or that situation, but the Lord is calling you to do the seva. That's actually what's going on. Mahaprabhu is asking for your service. That's really spiritual vision. That we are not getting stuck on the objective circumstances, but we are seeing what is the spiritual reality behind that. And remember, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he discusses this point in Sri Guru and His Grace, the zigzag line of the truth, right? Krishna actually is more interested in backhanded transactions. Gurudev mentions nicely in Affectionate Guidance, what is it that he says? Krishna is always searching for the rare services. The direct face-to-face, straightforward transaction, that's a little boring for him. He likes to mix things up, spice things up again. So he may come to your back door instead of to your front door. So are we ready for that? Krishna may come in disguise to our back door. Won't come knocking at our front door, the big sign, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's my business card. That's more like Vaikuntha dealings. Krishna likes to, Vrindavan is more tricky and hidden and unexpected. So we have to be prepared for that. And it's also, the nature of spiritual vision, spiritual exchange, that everything has some deeper meaning, right? Not everything is as it is at face value. Like there's one famous statement of Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita when Sanatana, this is when Mahaprabhu is on his way to Vrindavan for the first time. And then along the way, he meets with Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. And Sanatana Goswami advises Mahaprabhu, so Mahaprabhu's heading from Puri to Vrindavan. And when he reaches Ram Kelly, then he meets Rupa and Sanatan there. This is like the border of Bengal. He's about to Orissa. No, Ram Kelly is Bengal, actually. Yeah, because he goes from Puri to Bengal, and then he heads to Vrindavan. And then he's reached the border of Bengal, about to proceed on to Vrindavan. And Sanatana Goswami advises him, actually, I don't think it's good for you to go now to Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu's, because he's gone this roundabout way through Bengal, he's collected this huge following. There are like hundreds of people following him. And Sanatan, he's a little concerned, remember India's under Muslim rule. And if Mahaprabhu attracts too much attention to himself, then some of the Muslim rulers may feel threatened by that. So he advises, and also he mentioned something like, it's better to arrive to Vrindavan in a humble, quiet way, something like that. And so Mahaprabhu, at the time he doesn't say anything, but he changes his plans and he goes back to Puri. But then later he mentions Sanatana Mukhe Krishna More Shikaila, that through the mouth of Sanatan, Krishna instructed me. So Krishna was teaching me, but through Sanatan. This is Guru, right? This is also the function of Guru, that the Lord is instructing us through the Guru. This is one vision of Guru, at least. So we must always keep that kind of broad vision. In spiritual dealings, there's this broadness. I remember too, sometimes Avadut Maharaj once, he told of how Goswami Maharaj was, some incident had taken place and Goswami Maharaj was disturbed by it, and he was expressing this to Avadut Maharaj. But then Avadut Maharaj's feeling was, actually, this chastisement is for me. Actually, I'm the, in consideration of all the details of the incident, he felt really, I'm the one who needs to be corrected, right? So that type of feeling will come to the heart of the Vaishnava. They're always seeking self-correction. Like, why am I hearing this? Even Gurudev mentioned that once in London. You know, he received an abusive phone call. I don't know the details of it, but some abusive phone call, and somebody was insulting Gurudev, and Gurudev's just sitting there listening quietly, humbly. And then finally the call ended and Gurudev hung up, and Goswami Maharaj was seated next to Gurudev, and he said, you know, Maharaj, you don't need to take these calls. You can let me take these calls. Like, I'll handle these things. You shouldn't be having to deal with this. And Srila Gurudev, very humbly, he said, why is Krishna allowing me to hear these things? You know, why is Krishna allowing me to hear these things? So the more that our faith develops, the more we will see things with this type of broad spiritual vision, that it's not about this person or that person right in front of me, or this situation or that situation that's directly confronting me, but what's behind that? You know, what is really being asked of me here? What is really the teaching here? Where is this really coming from? You know, this is the type of deep, you know, soul-searching response that, you know, more developed Vaishnavas will have, you know, will feel in these kinds of challenging circumstances. So that is the highest view. And that is what, you know, we are aspiring for, what we are trying to move towards. But at the same time, Luna, today's Luna's birthday. She's 7 years old. You want to say hello, Luna? Some of our friends here on Zoom. Is Amrita's daughter. So, you know, that's the highest spiritual vision, but then we may also need to recognize our limitations, right? That, okay, this is really where I'm trying to go, and this is how my gurus see things, but I'm not there right now. And so we may have to understand what our limitations are, but we don't want to be too rigid. You know, we may set some boundary. This is as much as I can do, but we don't want to be too rigid. You know, that's never a healthy mood in service life. You know, we want to keep some degree of flexibility, right? It's kind of like we're limiting ourselves. You know, I mean, even mundane people in the world, they'll talk about this, right? You know, be open to the possibilities, right? You know, sometimes in order for a big gain, we may have to take some risk, right? So we don't want to be too rigid, too fixed, and put too much limitation upon ourselves. You know, like, oh, this is how much I can do. Like, how do you know? You're operating a tiny business, but you have potential to be a billionaire. You know, why not believe in that? You know, so also we have that type of spirit. We have the potential to be spiritual billionaires. You know, so we should leave some space for that, for the Lord's will to work through us. That's ultimately what we are trying to do. Put ourselves out of the picture. Put our ego out of the picture and be open. How does the Lord want to use us? And we may sometimes experience, even in our small way, that we look at where we are now and think of ourselves 10 years ago and think, oh gosh, you know, there's been some change. You know, there's been some growth. So why not more? If I could achieve this, then I can achieve something more too. You know, so we want to, it's not about us ultimately, but it's not about what we think we're capable of, but it's about having faith in the divine will, the power of the divine will of our gurus, Do we have faith in that or not? You know? So let me open myself to that. You know? And then, if I can also add some personal reflections, that in my service life in Navadvip, I always tried to do my service in that kind of spirit. And I also, my principle was always never to ask anyone to help me unless unless I thought they really wanted to help. Because service should, if someone doesn't feel that service is a privilege and a joy, then I almost feel like better not to do it, or I will never ask that person to do anything. I never like service to turn into a utilitarian issue. Like it's something that needs to happen. Like then it turns into a material thing, right? The cooking needs to be done. The puja needs to be done. The cleaning needs to be done. Check all the boxes and who's going to do it. That turns into something material. But it's all a privilege. That everything should be offered in that type of spirit. So I always had that principle when I was doing service in Navadvip. I would never ask anyone to help me unless my preference was that they would offer, or if I knew that they wanted to be asked, then I would ask for their help. And so in the beginning, like when I was starting my service life, it could be very difficult sometimes. Like there were a few festivals when I had like a whole guest house to clean and get ready and so much office things to do. And, there were a few occasions like that where, I was totally overwhelmed, totally exhausted. And there were guests arriving, but I didn't want to ask them to do anything. But then, as time went by, then, persons started to recognize, oh, this girl here is doing a lot of service here and I would like to help. And so people would start volunteering. And then it grew and grew and, to the point where, it was never an issue at all. And I didn't even need to do that service. I could do so many other services instead, So, it was like I had those periods when it was very difficult and I kind of had to just hang in there, but I always felt like Krishna's going to come in, Gurudev's going to come in and that he's going to give me the support, the backing, that because I want to have that vision that, it's not happening by accident. It's not random. It's not that I'm a victim of this situation, but the Lord is there. Gurudev was there and they will see this girl is trying to do something, and they will help me when they want to help me. And until then, I'm just going to wait, So I always tried to serve in that spirit, and I always got the result of that, although there may have been some interim period of difficulty. So that's another perspective. There's one, there's this expression, Atma Nikshepa, in the 6 limbs of Sharanagati. One of the 6 limbs is Atmani Vedam, Sharanagati, surrender, 6 limbs of surrender. Welcome, Ananga Krishna Prabhu. Wow, long time. Nice to see you. Dandavat. In the 6 limbs of surrender, right? Atmani Vedanam, in self-giving, right? This is one of them. But sometimes that Atmani Vedan is also rendered as Atmanikshepa, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj uses that name and that term in Prapana Jivanamrita, right? Atmanikshepa. And he explains that Nikshepa, that Atmanikshepa, and we asked this recently to one of our scholars, Alita Madhavan, he confirmed that this Nikshepa, one of the meanings is like throwing. And so Srila Maharaj, the way he translates this Atmanikshepa is desperately throwing oneself towards the infinite. To desperately throw oneself towards the infinite. It's so beautiful. Like that's the kind of spirit we want to have. Like let's just be thrown in. Let's get thrown into the deep ends. And let's take the jump and expect the Lord to catch us. It's a real thing. You know, this is all a real thing. And if we take those steps, if we have that type of spirit, we will experience the result of that. You know, this is not imagination or philosophy, but we are engaging with the divine reality. We're interfacing with the divine reality. You know? So, and another thing is, you know, sometimes I think of it as a kind of pettiness, you know, like, you know, we don't want to have pettiness. Like sometimes what I see in, I mean, you know, part of the problem in temple spaces is familiarity, this principle, right? Familiarity breeds contempt, right? This is something that can come up in temple spaces, especially for smaller spaces, right? We're interacting with one another over like tiny day-to-day things, and some little things can start to really get annoying, like a man using the ladies' bathroom and always leaving the toilet seat up, right? These little things can just start to build up and build up, you know? Or somebody, when they wash the dishes, they leave water everywhere, right? All these little, somebody showers and they leave their hair all over the bathroom, right? Like these little things, like petty things, you know, we can start to get really small-minded, right? And we're forgetting the bigger picture. And we're just seeing, oh, this person, they always leave their hair in the bathroom, right? And that's all we're thinking about. You know, we have to get out of that kind of, this is like, it's a pettiness. It's a kind of pettiness. It's human. It's part of the human conditioning. I remember one time, this was actually involving those same devotees in Brazil, but it happens everywhere, this kind of thing, you know. I remember one of them was complaining about the other, like, oh, they never wash their dishes, you know, they just leave their dishes in the sink. And I was thinking, and I think they even went and told that devotee, you know, you have to go wash your dishes. But I was thinking, okay, maybe they're not so good at washing the dishes, but there's so much other service that they're doing, you know, or like in one of the places where I was just recently, there's one devotee, she actually came from a very wealthy background, and their family lost their money more recently, but she grew up with maids and all of this. Like she doesn't really know how to clean, and you know, and she'll leave her dishes everywhere, and I literally clean up after her like she's my daughter or something, you know. But I just think to myself, like, okay, she's not very good at like cleaning up after herself, but she's doing this other service that she was doing, this garden service, you know, wonderful garden service, and that she's doing this other service. So maybe here, you know, she can't do this very well, but she's good at something else. Like, let's just see the big picture here. Like, let's not just get stuck on this little like zoomed in, isolated thing, right? So that's something to be careful for in our temple dealings, right? In our interactions with devotees, to, you know, we don't want to become, you know, have this tunnel vision, become narrow-minded, petty-minded, but we want to be broad and expansive and generous. There's also a very beautiful line of Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he says, the more accommodating we are, I'm paraphrasing along these lines, the more accommodating we are with the environment, the more we will come to enter a more accommodating plane. Like this, that I don't think that's exactly how he says it, but the idea was like the more generous we are, and maybe he used the word generous, like, and like we're not being too, like, you know, like this kind of karmic mentality of tit for tat, or too much on the plane of justice, right? Like we want to get over that. And so he's saying, like, the more generous we can be in our dealings with the environment, you know, be broad and forgiving, the more we will enter a freer plane, the more we will enter a plane that is truly generous, that is truly accommodating, that is truly free. You know, it is a scientific thing, and anyone can experience that if they try to apply that in their daily lives. Maybe that was everything. Maybe was there some, I'm sure there's more I wanted to say on that, but maybe I'll stop there. Anyone want to add anything to that discussion before we go on to the next topic. Oh, I see Chaitanya Dai has also joined us. Welcome. But yeah, it's I'm really happy we got this topic. It's always relevant. Yeah. And then you had another topic, Govindandini, about this kind of friction between senior and junior devotees. Go, Gangalila, you want to say something?
Yeah, I actually, for example, as we were talking, I get it was there's always too much service and not enough people to do it, etc. I understand that very well. But while you were discussing, I get a text and a cancellation that happens a lot lately, and it's difficult. I feel like oftentimes, just like the last year or so, I've been losing a lot of work. Is that the same attitude though? I should be, because I went through this whole like, oh no, and oh my God, and I have to pay my rent and blah blah, this whole blah blah blah. And I was still trying to listen and to make sense what you were saying, even though it's the opposite. Basically, I would have loved to do that service, but now I can't. It's all the same. Like when when service is taken away, is that?
Well, let me get back to that. You reminded me of I forgot the last point I wanted to discuss too, was that that, like, what I just described is how we as individuals will try to adjust ourselves, but also on the side of the management, there should be some sensitivity in how things are being set up, how things are being organized. There's that should be, we shouldn't let devotees feel that things are happening randomly and that things are getting dumped on them. There should be care on the side of management to try to organize things in a way as far as possible, so that devotees don't feel like that. Maybe that means reducing some of the services, minimizing things according to what's practical. Also, just how you're telling people too can help. Like giving someone a personal call or meeting them in person, that can help. Things like that can make all the difference. Like sometimes these things, they're done like through third parties. I see that, or I've experienced too, like it'll be like, oh, tell so-and-so to do this. It's like, oh, okay, well, nice to know how much my contribution means to you. Like get on the phone, give them a personal call, or go and see them, and express appreciation. Because that's another thing. Like if devotees feel appreciated, they will perform twice as much. They will be inspired to give twice as much seva if devotees are feeling appreciated. And that's ideally the type of environment, the type of atmosphere that we want in our temples, where everyone's competing to give their service, right? Where it's not like who devotees are fighting over what needs to be done and who has to do this and has to do that, but they're fighting over who gets to do it. We want that type. That's ideally the kind of atmosphere that we want to create in our temples. And really, I think the foundation of that is the spirit of appreciation, where devotees feel, like Yudamanyu Prabhu was a really beautiful example of that. Like he just could be over the top, so exaggerated in how much he would express appreciation for devotees. And like I've told this story many times, but I always remember one time I sent, it was like maybe $100. When I was 16 years old, I was still going to high school in England, and he was in China and doing this amazing service in China. Dandavat Ramananda Prabhu, welcome.
Dandavat Vishakha Didi.
Happy to see you, Prabhu. And he was doing this service in China, and Gurudev was so happy about it. So I was like just a kid, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to send some. So I sent, like, I don't know, it was maybe 50 pounds or not more than 100 pounds or $100 or something. And for years afterwards, then later I ended up going to China, like so many years later. And he would always talk about that, how I sent that little money, And he even told me at the time, like, I've been here so many years and you've done more service than me, you know. But I found out later there was some backstory, like the money came at a really crucial time. I think Shuddha Shava was visiting and he'd been sick or something, and he needed some extra money to help with some hospital bills or something. But anyway, like he made these kind of crazy, like, you know, you've done more service than I've ever done. It's like, what are you talking about? He would always talk like that, you know, and like giving this, and he was so personal, you know, like everyone around him always felt loved and appreciated and acknowledged. And of course, our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he's the supreme example of that. You know, he made everybody always feel important. Gurudev made everybody feel important, you know, and not in an egotistical way necessarily, but just like my existence matters. I am loved. You know, Gurudev had that magic. And so that creates an atmosphere where devotees are inspired and eager to give more, to stretch themselves. So of course, you know, as individuals, we will try to adjust ourselves to the environment with spiritual vision, no matter what's coming at us. But those in the position of management, you know, also need to try and, you know, deal with the devotees in such a way where they, you know, they aren't feeling like they're being overwhelmed with service needs, but rather that they want to give, that they're voluntarily stretching themselves to give more. You know, that's the ideal environment that we want to create. So that was the other thing I wanted to say. And then Ganga Leela brought up another angle here, interesting angle. What about the opposite of that? Where we want to give service, but we're losing our service, right? Where service is, but we don't have the privilege of having to complain about too much service. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, people say sometimes third world problems, you know, sorry, first world problems, right? Like if people will come up with all these silly things, like I don't know which phone to buy, like first world problem, right? So also like devotees who live in temples, they have these kind of privileged problems of too much seva, right? Because then there are those who don't have that privilege. You don't have the service, direct service connection. So then what? Well, actually, the ideal in life is to live in a state of aspiring for service. That's actually what Krishna consciousness is. Remember, service ultimately is not just a physical activity, but it's a state of consciousness. And what specifically, what state of consciousness? The aspiration to serve. So in those situations where we don't have direct service, we can take them as opportunities to increase our desire, increase our appreciation. You know, and this is something that's mentioned in many places in the writings of our gurus. This word asha, the word asha means hope or aspiration. And so you see that in some of the prayers of our gurus. There's a famous prayer of Raghunath Das Goswami where he uses this phrase, Radhika Madhavasham. He refers to the aspiration to serve Shri Radha Krishna. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj also, in the Pranam mantra which he composed at the time of establishing Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Math, he concludes the verse with that. Shrad Shiradha Jitasha, this asha, the same expression is there. So that's really what Krishna consciousness is. It exists in the aspiration for Krishna consciousness, in the aspiration to serve Shri Radha Krishna, Shri Guru Gauranga. You know, so if we have an opportunity to increase our hankering, right? Then also the feeling of separation comes in here. Separation increases our desire. So when we are separated from our, you know, our heart, our inner heart desire, then it will increase that desire more. So we will No, Krishna consciousness is about living in constant adjustment and readjustment and calibration, recalibration. You know, Saraswati Thakur, religion means proper adjust. This is his definition of religion. Religion means proper adjustment. So this is what a dynamic Krishna conscious life is about. And every time, place, and circumstance, we're seeing how can I, it's kind of like an opportunistic spirit. Like, how can I use this to my advantage to grow my Krishna consciousness more? I'm not going to be despondent. Let's take this in an optimistic spirit, let's deal with this situation in a progressive spirit. Dandavat Narotam Itai Prabhu, welcome. Let's be progressive in how we're facing every situation. What lesson can we draw when we're with the devotees? What lesson can we draw when we're not with the devotees? What lesson can we draw when we have seva? What lesson can we draw when we don't have seva? How can I maximize my Krishna conscious growth in every circumstance that we face? So yes, and I think too, those periods when we don't have service or we're unable to do service, then we can prepare the ground, right, for when we do have service. We can, use more time for Shravan, Kirtan, hearing, chanting, self-reflection, introspection. Because another issue is that when we're in kind of like the daily flux of immediate service, we can sometimes lose that mood of introspection. And then when we kind of take those moments to step back, then we see things with clearer vision. And we get ready, to kind of jump back in. So I don't know if that's directly addressing the issue you raised, Gangalila.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was like to prepare the grounds and to just be ready, and that introspection and reflection is as important as service, or it is also a service. That's really good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, it's all interconnected, right? It's all interrelated. Our hearing and our chanting, it enables us to offer higher quality seva, right? So very nice topic raised. And Govindanandini, we still have some time left. Can you repeat again what it was you were bringing up?
My question is more about in the sense of balance between when you are organized as a group, and of course to distribute, to acquire, to preach for newcomers, and yes, they really need kind of a special attention, like a baby when he's born. He's the attention of the house, but the balance between this and cultivating who has already arrived,
Yeah. That's a real tricky point. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I struggle with sometimes too. It can be a very delicate operation. Well, one of the things that you mentioned also is you were Chintamani. I think this was inspired by a comment of Chintamani's last week, saying that the newcomers are the most important, right? And so, but then, and so there is this. Okay, Seva Rup has a question here too. What if we are not qualified enough yet for seva? Does that also cover preparing the soil ground? We can always do something, right? We can always do something.
I think Vishakha Didi, I'm just like in my prayers, everyone says pray for seva. But I think I'm just praying that I can be qualified enough to do something because, I think being, well, I'm not that new now, but, like coming into the environment, I think with the devotees at the temple, they've been so, how can I say, like, they've just kind of leave you to do what you need to do without like any criticism or giving you like a position, even if you're singing and it's so off tune, they're so like kind to like, allow that and you're just trying, but it's, yeah, I think it's, I feel it's difficult if you can't really do much, but but they so kind in a way that they still allow you, even if you're so faulty. I mean, for myself, and I think slowly by their grace, you try, you just keep trying.
Hi, wow. Their resplendent lordships are here with their dear servitors, Manangi. Oops, I'm just gonna bring over the altar here. The deities have just received their dress for the day. Tomorrow is the anniversary of their appearance here in at the Sokel Seva Ashram. Wow, so beautiful.
It's so nice the little flags are still up. I was there when we hung them up for the festival, the Gauranga festival.
Oh no, they just went up yesterday.
Oh, I see. They came
Yeah.
down. Okay.
Yeah, they normally take them down and then put them
I
up
see.
again.
They're so
Yeah.
pretty.
They put them up a little early because Janardhan Maharaj arrived back yesterday from India. So they also, normally they would have put them up this evening for tomorrow, but they put it up yesterday because Janardhan Maharaj was just coming back. So to welcome him. So going back to Seva Rupa Didi here. Sorry, what exactly was the question? You're saying how you don't feel that you're qualified to do seva, but the senior Vaishnavas, they're very accommodating and accepting. And
yes, so I think I just wanted to find out, like, we're talking about how to, I mean, when it comes to seva and that, and I know we're always praying for seva, but I think I was just asking what's your advice if you're not qualified for seva, should you also like just like you were giving the advice to Ganga Leela and saying, just try, and even if it's a conscious thing, and prepare your mind or like the soil, for and when you are qualified, or and I just wanted to also find out, because you were saying like in your instance where you were alone doing so much seva, but maybe as newcomers, I don't know if, like for myself, whether you feel qualified to be doing anything, or is it just a burden if you're in the way, but I mean in the temple environment.
Okay, I understand. Chaitanya, Jai, did you get to have darshan? I saw you just turned on your camera. Here, I'll put again. Here you are. It's their Lord. Guru Goranga Gandharvika Giridharija.
Thank you, Vishakha Didi, for that.
Okay, well, you know what, Seva Rupa, I'll give you the straight answer. We have to let go of the ego that we can do good, we can do, things perfectly. We have to think of ourselves as kindergarten students. And we just have to accept that, we may we may be annoying sometimes. I'm not saying that about you. I think I can't imagine that you wouldn't do anything that wasn't perfect.
No, Vishakha Didi, when they say like, when they singing and then they ask me to sing, I'm so off key and they still ask me again for the next time to sing something. It's so bad. And like even if I try and do something, I know how faulty it is. So, that's what I mean. Like,
I mean, there are different angles on that. Like you can see it as practice, like it's a necessary part of learning. It's part of the growing curve, the learning curve, right? And that may be disturbing or annoying, but that's okay. Like actually in order to grow, we do kind of have to just throw ourselves out there. And learn the real through real life lessons and real experience and practice. So we can't be afraid of being exposed, and we can't, and I'm not speaking about you, I'm just speaking in general. Like we have to also accept the fact that people are going to tolerate us, and that's okay. Like that's like a real family mood, like this is something Srila Gurudev has mentioned. It's like in a temple, even if you're told to leave, you won't leave. Like in a family, like the mother may sometimes tell the child, get out, I never want to see you again, but the child won't literally do that, right? It was a comment, I believe it was Krishna Das Babaji, he made some comment how like in families, people throw all kinds of abuse at one another and they're still so tight. But in temples, sometimes someone just says one wrong word and it's like, you're out. That's it. The relationship's over. Like we should feel like this is my brother, just like my blood brother, or more even. This is my spiritual brother, spiritual sister. It's more than any blood connection, much more. So it's okay if we're creating a disturbance. It's okay if we're being tolerated. We just have to accept that. And we can think, may I, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, may I grow into something more and be a source of support in the future. It's like children, right? It's like your children, they're, you have to feed them and clothe them, and they're a headache some of the time or a lot of the time. But by tolerating their deficiencies and their ignorance on different levels, you're giving them the opportunity to grow into beautiful human beings, beautiful contributing agents. You plant one seed in the ground. When I visited my mother a few weeks ago, she said this one really wonderful thing one day. Chintamani was saying something about, it was some little thing like my mother gave her something, and Chintamani said, oh, that's so generous of you. And my mother said, you put a seed in the ground, after some years, it will give hundreds of apples. And she said, that's the real standard of generosity. I really liked that. So like that, we are all like those seeds, and we need to be nourished and cared for, and we have to take time and energy and resources from others. But then we will grow into something bright and beautiful by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, and we can give something back also. So we are like babies in that sense. But then I'm speaking broadly, on the other hand, you may feel that maybe there are particular services that aren't for you, like singing. You may feel like maybe it's better if I don't sing. You can do another service, but maybe it's practice, right? Maybe you need to practice. So, there are some individual decisions you'll have to make, in that regard. So yeah, but yeah, we have to just be comfortable with, being unqualified. We're students, and that's okay. We're happy and we're comfortable with being students. We're comfortable with who we are and what we are and where we are. We're part of a family. So it's okay. And welcome, Narayani, Devi, our dear sisters also joined us. Dandavat. Govinda Nandini, your question, I was thinking maybe better to leave it to next, because it's a big topic, and there are a lot of things I'd like to say, and probably things you would like to say and others would like to say. So maybe we'll end on a cliffhanger.
Yes.
The eternal struggle between senior, junior, the eternal, what's the word? Friction. It's like it's an eternal issue in temples, because sometimes it does go too much. There's too much focus on the new persons, and there's neglect of the existing devotees. And then there's also can be the other way around. Everyone, I see both dynamics. And then there can also be this kind of like this in-house closed circle mood, and new people aren't really being accommodated, So it's a tricky balance, a tricky thing, and yeah. So there's a lot I'd like to say in that regard. But yeah, from one perspective, from one perspective, yes, what Chintamani says, I can also show a direct quote of Srila Sridhar saying the same thing. There's one quote where he says he refers to the newcomers as being in the premier position. Why? Because they're like babies. We can also take the analogy of a family again here, right? It's like the babies, the children, they have some special position because they're totally new and vulnerable and weak. Their faith is weak and undeveloped, so they need a lot of support. But then on the other hand, there has to be honor given and appreciation, for those who have seriously committed to this, and they should have some freedom. Oh, and Ajita Krishna Prabhu also, Dandavat, welcome. Ajita Krishna also joined us. They should be.
Dandavat, Devi.
The senior devotees, they should also be appreciated and given space to express their vision and their service energy and desire. So yeah. Okay, Chaitanya Jaya, thanks for joining us, and see you again. Let's see, Narottam Prabhu also has a comment. There are so many varieties of services, from DT service to Harinam, Sankirtan, etc. So sometimes it's important to be in a stable enough environment to do a specific service, and also be able to change services as circumstances and advancement interest changes. Also implementing proper guidance from Guru is very important. Could you reflect on the dynamics of seva and sadhana? Okay, wow. Okay, we've got lots coming out of this discussion. Okay, I think we have to save this one too for next week. But yeah, that's some great reflections there. I'm gonna copy this and save it for next, because we're running out of time now. Okay, I'm saving this. And so, you want to say something, Govinda Nandini?
Oh, yes, but in relation to Sevarupa's question.
Oh, okay, what is it?
It's because I found something so beautiful, a line from Srila Guru Maharaj in Shri Prapana Jivanamritam. The ninth chapter, the verse 48, his illumination says, it is faith that qualifies one for exclusive devotion, not birth or any other worldly qualification. It says, Kevala Bhakti Adhikara Datritam, as she was asking about qualification. And I just, I was going through this line.
Where is that from? Sorry, did you say? You did say.
Yeah, the 48th verse.
Sorry, of what?
Ninth chapter.
Oh,
chapter 9. Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, nice. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Very nice.
Yes, this subject has subjects. They are all very nice. All those things we talked about, and we can let them for next week.
Yeah, these are nice topics because they're very kind of practical and relevant to our day-to-day on the field. Practicing Krishna consciousness. There's no pie in the sky here. So nice. Yeah. Okay, well, should we wrap things up for today, or any last comments anyone wants to share? Yeah. Okay, well, we've got a few things on the list for next week. So, well, thank you all so much for your wonderful association. And
Thank you, Vishakha Didi. Thank you.
you know what? Actually, I think I'm going to be flying. No, maybe I can still tune. I think maybe I'm going to be at the airport. Maybe I can still tune in. I'll see. I'll have to work it out. I have to check I have a flight next Tuesday. But I'll work it out. I think I can still join because it's before the flight. So we'll work it out. We'll work it out. Okay, well, my dandavat to all of you. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jishi Guru Guranga Gandhari Ka Girit Hari Ju ki jai. All the assembled devotees, sincere seekers ki jai. Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande.